We are in our final stretch, and when we think about the final stretch of Columbus, he was a discoverer, and we have 3 discoverers with us here today who are, I think we can affectionately maybe refer to them as the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, right? to stick with the theme. I'm delighted, thank you, Jay. Delighted to be back on stage with you to share what the front lines look like when we combine localization, video, and mobile. And with me today, moving from left to right, I have Sandra Weber, who's with us all the way from Cancun, Mexico. So I think you've traveled the furthest.
Yeah, it was a nice travel, non-stop flight, in fact, yesterday.
Good. Well, we're delighted to have you. She's the e-business deputy director for Experiencias Xcaret, so bienvenida.
Thank you so much. And in fact, I'm Mexican with a last name in German, and I don't speak German, so I'm part of the international thing.
So there you go. Yeah. This is localization in the flesh. Yeah. I also have Jimmy Lee, who's the global marketing lead for Supercell, a Finnish company, but you're based in San Francisco since I think your marketing team operates out of there.
Yeah, we're based in, our development team is in Helsinki, and our marketing and business operations runs out of San Francisco.
Great. And Supercell is a gaming company. We've talked quite a bit about gaming today, and we'll come back to Jimmy in a moment. He'll share his mission in a little bit more detail. And finally, Alix Hart, who's the vice president from Symantec for global brand, digital, and advertising, just about maybe quarter of a mile away from here.
About 5 minutes away.
Well, delighted to have you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Want to start off by having them articulate the mission of their company, because it's 3 very distinct industries. And they will in about 30 seconds or less. You know, I'm the guy who always has a timer up here, it seems. But very briefly, if you could explain from a tourism standpoint what Xcaret does and your role in relation to that.
Sure. Well, our company is located in Cancun and Riviera Maya. And, well, we have 4 theme parks in that area and some tours to Chichen Itza and some other archaeological areas. And, well, by the end of this year, we are going to receive 3 million visitors. What it makes interesting for this is that we are located in the most important international tourist location or destination in Latin America. Mexico receives almost 30 million visitors from all over the world, and the second largest country is Argentina. So in the area, we receive 9 million visitors from all over the world, and that gives us a context of why it's important to have international campaigns. What I do in the company, I have in charge the e-commerce area, social media, e-marketing, and contact center.
Wonderful, good insight. Jimmy, Supercell.
Sure, Supercell, you guys might be familiar. We make a couple of titles right now that are out there, Clash of Clans, Heyday, Boom Beach. Our mission is to be the first truly global gaming company. And for us, that means we want to reach as many millions of players as possible, and ideally have them playing our games for many, many years. And what I do, I'm actually the media lead and not the global marketing lead, the global media lead here. And what that means is anytime that there's any sort of budget that's being applied, whether it's offline or digital, anytime some sort of money is being spent, that's usually my team that's handling that.
Thanks, Jimmy. Alix.
That's great. I'm with Symantec. We're the largest cybersecurity company. Our mission is to make the world a safer place by enabling businesses and governments and consumers to have their digital information protected and their customers' information protected. We operate with 2 different brand names, Symantec for the B2B side, and Norton is what you might be familiar with for consumer security. My role is brand digital and advertising, so I'm responsible for our media, planning and budgeting worldwide, as well as our global brand strategy for both.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the insight. So as I mentioned, through the course of the next 25 or so minutes, we're going to move sort of seamlessly between stories around video, localization, and as well as mobile. So if you see us pivoting between those, if they're picking up on each other's comments, that's what we're going to be focused on. Jimmy's also going to talk a bit about in Asia, since Supercell has a rather significant presence there. But we'll go into other regions if the conversation takes us there. Sandra, let's start with you. You take a look at your website. You guys have done a really nice job balancing between Spanish and English. What prompted Xcaret to integrate language and currency options on its website?
Well, as I said, we're in the most important tourist destination in Latin America. And 5 years ago, we started with our digital strategy. The business of the company was totally different. We basically were selling only through third-party transactions. That means travel agencies or local representatives. So when we started doing campaigns in digital, we started realizing the potential we had. And so because 40% of the people arriving there come from the US, 27% only from Mexico, 11 more or less about, from Canada, and the rest from Europe and Latin America. So once we started doing campaigns, we started selling to different countries, but we realized that we also needed a platform to sell in different currencies and using different form of payments. So a couple of years ago, we started integrating a global platform to give more options to pay in different currencies, translating the sites according to the markets, and well, that's why we do it.
Sticking with the localization theme, Sana, when she was speaking earlier, shared the Taboo #4 in Japan, and I know, Jimmy, when you guys went into Japan, you had some challenges with the #4. Can you talk us through that from a localization standpoint?
Yeah, so when we actually tried to enter into Japan, we had a television spot that we ran in the U.S. It was called, I forgot actually the name of the title, but it was basically all of our characters coming out. And all of our characters in our games don't actually only have 4 fingers, or at least they used to only have 4 fingers, and that's actually a taboo thing in Japan. And when we actually try to show that spot in Japan, all the networks told us you can't run that, and all the characters have 4 fingers. And we're like, well, Mickey Mouse has 4 fingers. They're like, it's an animal. Your characters are sort of like human beings. You can't do that. And then we try to do some spots where our characters are kind of like tapping on the screen of the camera, and they're like, you can't do that either. You can't point at audiences. So we ran into this really interesting issue where I guess localization comes in different forms, where we actually, if you look at our characters now, all of our characters have 5 fingers in the game. But if you go back and look at old images of our characters, you will see them having 4 fingers, but no longer.
The power of 4, or not. Let's stick with with Asia for a moment, and with you, Jimmy. We know gaming in Asia is massive. What's the impact of the Asian market on Supercell, and how has your strategy differed depending on which markets you've entered within Asia?
Sure. I said earlier that our desire, our goal is to become the first truly global gaming company. And I think if you are honest with yourself, I don't think you can say you're a global gaming company if you don't have a really strong presence in Asia. I think China, Korea, and Japan make up 3 out of the top 5 markets for gaming. And so I mentioned that we have an office in Finland. That's our headquarters. We have San Francisco, where we run like global marketing out of. But we also have 3 offices, and those 3 other offices are in China, and Japan, and Korea. And so that alone tells you just our commitment to the market, our desire to win that market. And I guess as far as how we look at different geos or countries there, realistically, China and Japan and Korea are different because we have our own team on the ground. We're really thinking about how do we bring our global brand, localize it to China, localize it to Korean audiences, and localize it to Japanese audiences. So that comes in different forms. I think that we can run a spot on television that's very, very specific to the Japanese audience or the Korean audience. Compared to like a country like the Philippines or Singapore, we don't have that sort of local presence, and so we draft a lot of the stuff that we do in like the Philippines, Indonesia, off of what we might have done in the U.S. And we might not even have television presence, and we usually don't in those other countries. Whereas in CJK, well, we typically try to have a very, very local campaign that's running at all times.
Good insight.
We're kind of similar to, I think, Japan is our 2nd largest market, and so we've had challenges where we've gotten kind of far down the path with creative, and then realized that we had some real localization or transcreation issues. So now we go back and we brief in Japan with our Japanese team as well as with our agency there right up front so that we can get more feedback early in the process on whether the strategy itself needs to be nuanced as we're building up creative.
Alex, can you expand on that in a moment? I think you raised a good point, which is agencies, local agencies, right? And it's not something we've necessarily talked about too extensively today as it relates to localization, having a local partner. But if you, how do you guys leverage agencies, and what do you see there from a return on investment standpoint?
We do worldwide. We made a change. We have a global agency of record for creative development for each of our 2 brand businesses. We have a local search agency in Japan as well. But for our creative development, we had a lot of our Asia creative. We were partnering with a team that was based in Singapore, and we realized that we had so many nuances within Japan that we actually shifted that team, still within the same creative agency, but out of the Japan office.
Okay. Let's stay with you, but shift regions for a moment. I know that Symantec has been keen to sort of rebrand its international strategy in Latin America, including Brazil. And I know that we have a video to share, but I'd prefer that you tee that up for us and talk us through that.
This was a global campaign, and it ran about 1.5 years ago, actually. When I joined a couple of years ago at Symantec, we were really both the Symantec and the Norton brands had not advertised in quite some time. They were dark for a period of time, so we had a real awareness challenge, and it was time to put both brands back on the map with our key audiences. Norton, I think for those of you who maybe have been experienced the Norton brand over the years, we had a history of being very negative. The scary alert messages that your computer was going to be taken over by a virus. We literally had some posters of cobras and snakes from campaigns of old, and our brand strategy was to really shift to a positioning of enablement, right? Consumers are going to live their lives digitally, and we just needed to be, let consumers know that we had their back and that we were helping protect them along the way as they go out and live their lives. So really needed to shift to an enablement strategy, and so we worked with Google. We planned with our media campaign a YouTube takeover that we ran, I think, in 5 countries around the world globally, and then we started with this new creative campaign. We shot it in Rome, which was fantastic to be there for the shoot, but we didn't have a lot of money to spend, and so we wanted to make sure that it could be globally relevant, highly visual, and we could capture a lot of locations around Rome that would signal, you really didn't know where in the world you were. So,
Sure.
So that kind of led us into this campaign.
Perfect. John, if you can roll the video.
If courage is contagious, get bitten. Your boldest days are still ahead, for the boldest future is still unwritten, the boldest story still unread. The boldest gift has yet to be given to the most naive of hearts. The boldest answer to a mistake is one that shows your smarts. The boldest email has yet to be opened. The boldest app has yet to be bought. The boldest file has yet to be downloaded without a second thought. Yes, the boldest life is out there, and as you chase it, remember this. If you go blindly, you'll find trouble, but go boldly and you'll find bliss.
O e-mail mais ousado ainda não foi aberto. O aplicativo mais ousado ainda não foi comprado. O arquivo mais ousado ainda não foi baixado, sem pensar 2 vezes. A vida mais ousada está lá fora. E quando for atrás dela, lembre-se. Às cegas, você pode encontrar algum problema, mas é ousando que encontrará a recompensa.
That was the start at a very high level, and then we started building out a number of more mid-level consideration messages and very specific messages about how we were protecting through Norton. But it was a great kind of first get the brand on the map, go global quickly, so that we could then start telling a more nuanced story throughout the funnel or the journey, if you will.
So you mentioned that you targeted 5 countries, but have you found that there are specific countries where video is actually working better?
Yes, definitely saw that. We did a similar thing, similar campaign, different look for Symantec too, and we saw for the B2B audiences, I think in particular, we had very different usage in video among different countries. We did very well in Asia, actually with video, particularly in China. With B2B and Japan. For Norton, I think we've altered our paid media strategy based on video consumption based on it, although we're organically leveraging video worldwide, probably pretty similarly by country.
Yeah, really fascinating. Thank you. Sandra, let's come back to you. When did Xcaret look to create its mobile site? Was it always done in parallel with its desktop site? Has that been obviously perhaps more recently? Talk us through that.
Okay, yes. No, well, it was some years later. 7 or 8 years ago, we had only a desktop site. And then we started building a site that included all the attractions and all the tours. That was like 5 years ago. And 4 years ago, we started with the mobile site. But for the last 2 years and a half, we have moved to the responsive design, and now we are getting focused to mobile first.
Talk us through a little bit more about responsive design.
Well, this kind of design allowed us to have a site according to any kind of size of your, if you use a tablet or you use a mobile or you use the desktop, we adapt the images and the content and everything according to the size of the screen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So children play a crucial role in your business as a tourism destination and one built around an experience and an amusement park. What makes you most proud about your website? What stands out to you on your website?
Well, we are always learning and trying to do things better. But now we sell to more than 100 countries using our sites. But what makes me really proud about it is that we have an internal team. We do everything inside the company. And, well, that makes us be faster. Because usually we work with the Google very close and they arrive with some betas and we can implement them very easily because we have an internal team.
Good. Jimmy, back to you. I think when we look at APAC, the APAC region, you see some fragmentation from a monetization standpoint, right? No 2 countries the same in terms of payment. What are some of the challenges, including monetization, that Supercell faces within APAC?
With regard to monetization, I'm going to have sort of a boring answer. We don't really focus too much on monetization. Our viewpoint is that monetization is more of a function of player adoption and engagement. So from a product standpoint, I think we focus a lot on building games that people can play, not just for a few days, but years and years. And then from a marketing standpoint, I do think that we're try to show the quality of our games through our marketing, through sort of our messaging, as well as just trying to reach a broad audience as possible and attract as many people into the games as possible. But there's definitely challenges. Some of the cultural things that I would point out is just, I think the cultural differences manifest in terms of like expectations. So a couple of things that I could actually point out and that have been challenges are in Asia, I think expectations are really different as it comes to what the games are supposed to deliver. So in Korea, China, Japan, I think there's more of this like VIP service that if you spend a lot of if you spend a lot of money, the expectation for the players is that you're going to be treated differently, or that you have access to things that other people don't. And so another thing is like live events. That's huge in Asia, right? And so with Clash, we our company's based in Finland. You know, it's a socialist country. Everyone is treated pretty much equally. So it's difficult for us to actually try to give preferential treatment to somebody that spent a lot of money compared to somebody who spent a lot of time. So we just don't do that type of things, and it feels foreign to us. And so those are the things that, you know, we're trying to wrap our head around. How do we make it feel local at the same time staying true to a global sort of experience?
Good insight. Thank you. Alex, you know, you're in charge of budget. You're looking at dollars, figuring out where to spend this money. What, you know, Professor Popper earlier today, I know you missed the morning session, but was talking about there are instances when you have to leave money on the table, right? You have to invest, even though there may be a little bit of risk there, and you may not know going into it what you're going to get back. When you think about these 5 campaigns that you spoke to leading up to the video and the rebranding effort, what were some of the considerations that you worked through to justify those costs, knowing that perhaps you guys were taking the longer view about what you were trying to achieve here?
I think it was about, for us, it was about establishing unique metrics for different stages of the journey. What is most important out of the campaign? We needed to put the brand back on the map. That wasn't going to necessarily drive to a sale in the quarter, right? So the performance metrics for Symantec and Norton, we still had to deliver on the business plan. So looking at our investments and making decisions on how much we were willing to invest in top-of-funnel brand awareness, and we wanted to move the needle on awareness metrics, on purchase intent, and which we did with this campaign, but we allocated a certain amount of spending based on that, and then looked at it more on the performance side as well. So getting alignment with the leadership team that, you know, we were going to look at the business in different ways with different types of spend was really important up front.
Same question for either of you. You know, as you look at where you spend your money and how and why you justify it should go in a certain place, what are some of those considerations? Jimmy.
Sure, that's actually really interesting that you brought that up, because if you think about our games, we don't have any games that have been out less than a year, right? Clash of Clans is 3 years old, Heyday's older than that. Boom's about to come up on its 2-year anniversary. So when we think about our players, reality is that there's probably more people playing Clash of Clans today than there is a universe of people outside of our games. And we're sort of running into a similar situation where before you're focused solely on conversion or new users, and now you have to start thinking about investing into your investing in your current players, and that requires a whole different set of measures, right? So things like brand affinity, NPS scores, and we're running into a lot of this stuff for all 3 of our games, and it really makes us think differently. The one thing I will say is that even when we actually run acquisition campaigns, which we still are globally, the question that we always end up asking ourselves is, you know, our most important thing is our current players, right? And so would they be proud? If they saw what was on television, if they saw a banner ad, a video on YouTube, would they be proud as a Clasher or as a Heyday player to see that?
Well, in our experience, we have a strategy that it's divided into 3 markets. Well, the main market is our own country because it's a growing it's a growing population moving to digital. So we are changing the way that they buy now. They are now more comfortable buying online. So for us, it's easier and cheaper to go to that market. That's Mexico. And the second market we are focusing in is U.S. because more than 40% of the arrivals or the tourists in the area are from U.S. So even when not a lot of people know our brands, we are investing a lot in brand awareness. So, and then in conversions. So it's gonna be more expensive than in Mexico, but we have huge opportunities of sales. And third, we are focused on those markets that probably are not the biggest, but they are. We have huge opportunities because the internet penetration is higher or they are growing, like Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, and Latin America in general. We do some other campaigns in Europe and other countries, but I would say those 3 markets are the main.
Good insight. In closing, when you think about your internationalization strategy and the main challenges that you're facing as you look ahead, what stands out to you? Alex, we'll start with you.
The first one that comes to mind is that when I think about what didn't work with this campaign, or what I wish we had thought a little bit more about, is the role of mobile through the whole experience. And there were some countries where almost all of the video views were done through mobile device, and so as you carry that through to the web experience, or to for Symantec into a lead gen form, those kinds of things down the road, down the path, we hadn't kind of mapped all the way through and found that we were breaking things in that experience. I think that's going to be hard country to country as we really figure out which tiers of countries we're going to invest in, and how we map that all the way through. I think that's a big challenge.
Jimmy?
I think for us, it's thinking about this long term. We want to have our local spots, our game, the way that it's portrayed, whether you're in China or whether you're in Korea. If you're a clasher and you go to Korea and you see a television spot there, it should feel familiar, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, that doesn't look like the same game that I play. And so we want to have this sort of umbrella, a global umbrella over our brand, but at the same time have our spots locally feel authentic to the culture. And I think there's a lot of challenges with that, where the local agencies that we're working with will come up with something, and it's difficult for us to actually imagine it being relevant or working for our game, especially since we seem to be sort of a little bit ahead as far as commercials go, or in terms of the number of campaigns that we've run. So I think that's a really big challenge for us, to make sure that it's a singular message and it doesn't feel fragmented country by country.
Yeah, it's definitely consistent with the localization theme that we've discussed today. Sandra?
Well, I would say but probably the biggest challenge we have, but what makes this very interesting, is that everything changes all the time. Sometimes we are working with some markets that could be growing, but sometimes the economy of that country could be changing, and then you need to move the strategy to some other countries. So it is very, very interesting to be learning, so we need to be open to learn all the time. That makes a challenge, but also the most important and attractive part of this.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. We have time for one question from the audience. I know, I'm very generous. Anyone want to ask a question of our panelists? I skipped you this morning, so it's fate. It comes back to you, Chris. Sorry.
So you guys mentioned a lot of tests that you guys do both domestically and globally. My question is, do you always test domestically first and then apply and research globally and then execute it there? Or do you guys often find that you are actually testing products and services globally first in your international markets first and then applying that learnings domestically?
It's a good question. Jimmy, you want to start us?
Actually, for us as a mobile-first or mobile-only company, we test. We do a bunch of betas in countries that usually represented in the beta, depending on the game needs, if it's asynchronous or not. Canada, New Zealand, some of the Nordic countries. We've also tested in Singapore. Hong Kong is on the. It's sort of like the representative Asian country, and so. We don't want to be in the big markets like US, Australia, UK without having our game being at a state where we feel like it's ready for global launch. And so we actually do all of our testing there. And then as far as when the game is global, I would say our approach to this thus far has been we go with the Western markets, and then the Asian countries, some of the Asian countries that we've talked about, we sort of adopt best practices and take it over there. But adopting is sort of a loose term. I would actually say that the local teams do, like we talked about this morning, due diligence is critical for us in making sure that we're serving the local markets in a way that they deserve to be serviced.
Sandra?
Well, we do both. That depends on the campaign, but every market thinks very different, and they react very different to the campaigns and to the message. So we do both.
I'd say the same, both. It depends on the type of testing, but definitely country by country, it's important to be testing the nuances and seeing where the innovation is.
Thanks, Alex. thank you so much for sharing your experiences. 3 very distinct industries, but yet very similar challenges and very similar successes as well. And you guys have added a really unique perspective to sort of bring this to an execution standpoint, right? What does this look like on the front line, since we've been talking quite a bit about concepts today? So thank you again, and we're delighted to have you, and thanks for joining us.